Very excited to talk about Significant Other. I watched it earlier this morning, and it was such a tense ride from start to finish. Now, I know you're no stranger to genre blending or genre bending fare.
Sure.
As seen behind you, I'm a big fan of villains. It was
Thank
great.
you so much.
But how did the story and the concept for Significant Other come about?
Sure. Yeah. The actual beginnings of it were pretty necessity based, where we were in the middle of the lockdown in 2020, and it didn't look like any movies were going to be happening anytime soon. And so we just tried to come up with a concept that would at least be extremely COVID friendly. And so, this was outside the whole time and a very limited number of actors. And so we kind of started with that. And we were going to go and do it, for a very low budget and just kind of run and gun, try to get Maika to come work with us again. We wrote the role for her. But then we kind of started to do more and more work on the script, and our reps suggested that we try to go a little bit bigger route with it. And so we wound up taking it around, which of course took more and more time. By the time we were shooting it, COVID was still an issue, but it wasn't as crazy as it was when we initially started writing it. And yeah, as far as like the genre blends in it, I think that it was a really fun exercise for us, because where villains is a bit of like, the genres are playing out at the same exact time, the whole movie. This one is a little bit more, we wanted there to be a bit of a rope-a-dope, where you kind of come into it thinking that it's going to be this more, austere ex machina style, like A24 heady sci-fi. And then you get to have maybe a little bit more genre fun than you thought you were going to. And that was something that we always wanted to do to kind of complement the twists that are in the movie.
Now, since you do mention the twists, I am curious. I'm not going to talk about them, but
sure. What twists? Yeah.
But I'm curious, with a film like this, it can be incredibly hard to market it without necessarily getting into those twists. And I'm curious, how involved were you in that marketing process? Did you have little notes that you gave to the team of like, maybe show this, maybe don't show this? How did that process go?
Yeah, we owe a great debt of gratitude to the Paramount marketing team that we worked with on this, because this is our first studio movie. And so we were told by, other filmmakers we're friends with and our producers that like, they're basically gonna, just show you the final thing. Like you don't really get, you technically have like consultation, but you don't really. So like, just, prepare to be devastated when you see the trailer and poster. And to their credit, they actually involved us really heavily in it. That, we gave many rounds of notes on the trailer. We had a big conversation before they started editing about what our perfect version of it was, which is, largely what you see in the final trailer, where we sort of gave them the impossible task of giving them our 3 or 4 bullet points that were the third rail for us. Obviously, as there are some, twists in the movie that we wanted to protect. And they went so far to even agree to, like Bobby said, in many ways, like kind of hide the genre of the movie, where it really is playing more like a sort of like psychological thriller, perhaps. You're not really sure what it is. You see there's a couple little sci-fi visual cues maybe in that trailer, but it really does hide a lot of the big, more sort of bombastic spectacle that the film ends up delivering. And same with the poster. They sent us a bunch of great options, and we gave notes and picked some cool ones. And they were all really awesome, actually. We hope that they end up releasing some of the other alts. But yeah, it was a really collaborative experience, and certainly probably one that won't be matched on our next films with other studios. I'm sure we will experience the less collaborative version, but it was great.
Well, I'm glad you got to have that, because, excuse me, you want to sell people this movie, but at the same time, you don't want to give it all away.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
I certainly felt that going in. I had, like you were both saying, that A24 heady sci-fi, maybe a little bit of the Wretched in there. And then I was like, oh, yeah, totally different.
Totally.
So then what was it like trying to find the look of the film? Because it does feel very different visually than your past work.
Sure, yeah. And, it's funny because it's the exact same director of photography that we've been working with on all of our movies, Matt Mitchell, who we owe another huge debt of gratitude to, because he is
an incredibly talented director of photography, but he's also a huge outdoorsman, and he loves. As soon as we came to him with this idea, he was flipping out, and he was sending us every day, just dozens and dozens of reference images, and and so we went into it knowing that this was still a studio level genre movie. And so sometimes I think the trap you can fall into is making things look almost too naturalistic, where things get too dark or moody or whatever. And so I think we found a nice balance where we did a lot to schedule the shoot around the light, and so we built out a schedule that was based around, like, okay, this angle we're going to do when the sun is here, and so then the next one it's going to be over here, and it's going to match because of that. And so there's sometimes waiting around on set to accommodate that, but I think you feel the quality of that when you watch it. I think that there's because you can manipulate things when you're outdoors, but it just doesn't look quite as good. And so Matt had a great plan about how to just kind of attack and build around the light. And then, the look itself, we shot Alexa LF. It's like a nice, big, large format digital camera. And so we just wanted to try to capture we always called it the vertical majesty of the forest, and so that's there in the aspect ratio too. We just wanted to have a little bit of a taller frame so that you could constantly feel, how small they were amongst these giant trees that really are so huge in real life. We're both from the East Coast, and the woods don't look like that, and once we got out there, we were just like, okay, we have to find a way to photograph this properly, because it's so majestic, and yet it's hard to really capture it, and so we tried to get as many low angles as we could to try to make it seem like the forest itself was a bit of a foreboding character in it.
Well, and it works very well, because you're right. It is much like, Blair Witch or something like that. It is, you feel very, it adds the tension. It ups the tension for the setting. So then I know you mentioned you wrote Maika's role specifically for her, but what was it like looking for her perfect screen partner for this film?
Yeah, it was. That was definitely a challenge. Not a challenge in that it was so hard, but it was something that we had to get right. We knew that. This movie, there's really not a lot to hide behind. It's very, very performance driven. It's obviously just two characters in the woods, so we needed to find someone who could really act, and also someone who had the proper chemistry with Maika, which for this film is a little tricky because it's not a rom-com. So the chemistry we were looking for wasn't exactly that they were madly in love. We needed to, in very nuanced ways and with a very non-explicit set of tools, show the strain in this relationship due to their sort of semi-divergent or increasingly divergent worldviews about marriage and about how they want to live their lives and whatnot. So we ended up getting kind of lucky. I mean, listen, we had seen Jake's name was thrown out at some point, during the casting process, but I think by our producer, Dan Kagan. And he, and I think you had seen White Lotus. Was about to start with my wife, and we sat down and watched the entire thing in a night, and I was just like, we both were flipping out, thinking this guy is absolutely perfect. And then, of course, we realized, I was like, oh yeah, we saw him in Obvious Child 10 years ago and thought he was great in that, and then realized that he had this kind of, again, I won't even say that because it's too close to a spoiler. But what ended up working really, really well that we got lucky with was that Maika and Jake in real life are in very different parts of their lives. Jake he's a little bit older. He's married. He has 2 young kids. He has sort of a more settled existence. Maika is younger. She's in her 20s. She travels a lot. They both kind of sort of spoke to their characters quite well, which of course made sense for Maika because we wrote the role for her, but we got very lucky with Jake. So when we first saw them on screen together, their real life kind of baggage, the truth that we're bringing to their roles worked perfectly in that contrast that we were looking for. And we knew that from the first time we all sat down for dinner in Oregon when everyone got there during prep. After the dinner, Bobby and I looked at each other and we were like, this is going to fucking work. This is great. Just seeing them speak, it was this is exactly, they got along really well. They really, really dug each other. But it's also you could just tell there was that teeny bit of distance because because of where they were in their lives. And that was something that we got very, very lucky with, that we think works quite well.
Yeah, like Dan said, there's nowhere to hide in this movie. It's just the two of them. And we knew going in, because we had worked with her before, that Maika, on screen, she's very, naturalistic and and has this unique quality to her. But she's also she's an unbelievable just performer and technician in her art. And so we needed somebody who would go toe to toe with her and actually be a good, there's a lot of, when you're casting a late 20s, early 30s guy, you get a lot of, pretty boys sent to you that maybe aren't the best actors, and Jake is the best of both worlds. He's obviously very handsome and all that, but he's a really, really good actor. And getting them together, there's so much of this movie that isn't even on the page that just came from them being in the same room together, running the lines together, and they both have like a hunger to go along with their talent. And so it was like just an incredible creative environment to be in.
Yeah, they both also have really, really sharp story sense. So like they both brought a lot of script notes to us and ideas for tiny things that ended up just being like our favorite moments in the movie. So it really was a very healthy collaboration between the four of us, for sure.
Well, I'm glad you were able to have that collaboration and that it came together as it did, because it is such a great film. I think genre fans and even non-genre fans alike are going to get a real kick out of it. Thank you guys both so much for taking the time to chat.